The major problem with FDA censorship is that there are tens of thousands of scientific studies that validate the safety and efficacy of dietary supplements. Those are buried in the scientific literature. The lay public doesn't have access to a lot of that material. The FDA does not allow companies that sell products based on that scientific research to inform the public.
If you said that water cured kidney failure or cured arthritis, the water becomes a drug. There is no innate chemical composition that makes something a drug. It's all about what you say about it. And if you say something can cure a disease, it is a drug, and your making that statement turns that transaction into a felony. And people have been charged with felonies under FDA law for introducing a product over the internet, for making statements over the net that a product was beneficial in various diseases.
I have a report done by the Legal Defense Fund that was organized at the time of our clinic raid that lists over 20 raids done by FDA on clinics, vitamin manufacturers, and so on between the years 1985 and 1993.
The Life Extension Foundation has been battling FDA censorship for the past 24 years. As a result, when people are attacked by the FDA who are offering legitimate dietary supplements to the public, we're often the first people that they call. We assist them with finding attorneys that can help them, and we also hear the horror stories. We hear of people whose businesses are shut down, who are facing bankruptcy because of the attorney's fees that they're facing. We hear of people who are facing long prison sentences simply for telling the public the truth about what a dietary supplement may do to prevent or treat a disease.
Alternative practitioners have been sanctioned and harassed pretty much throughout history, but certainly in the last 30 or 40 years when they deviate from so-called standard medical care. The physicians who focus attention on the environment, on dealing with toxicity, on dealing with nutritional factors, dealing with lifestyle factors to try to help people long-term, are often ridiculed, harassed, and even brought up on charges where some of them will wind up losing their licenses for relatively minor infractions.
Back in 1945, Time magazine had a famous little article about the benefits of vitamin E in preventing heart conditions and in helping heart health. And from 1945 until the time the AMA finally admitted that vitamin E had an important role to play in promoting heart health, 50 million Americans died of preventable heart disease. You know, this Holocaust was basically promoted by people who were not willing to look at advances in science, who are not willing to look at the lifestyle changes that people in the alternative community have supported for decades.
Just when we believed it was safe to change our lifestyle, eat healthy foods, to lose weight, and to feel good about ourselves and take our supplements, up comes Codex Alimentarius. It's been about 7 years. Now it's getting to the final stages, and even though it's in Europe, we better pay close attention because it could impact our freedoms of choice right here in the United States.
Codex Alimentarius, the World Food Code, is basically an attempt to harmonize law internationally so that trade can be smoother, can go between countries easier. But the problem is that the way they're harmonizing laws internationally, they're applying the wrong model. Our fear is that in the harmonization process, that law is going to be shortchanged. The FDA itself says on its own website that where there are international standards, our laws are going to be harmonized to those standards. Congress, however, has made it really clear vitamins, minerals, and herbs are foods, not drugs. We don't want them harmonized to those drug standards because they're not drugs.
Codex is a treaty that would control the amounts of nutrients and vitamins. In Europe, you can't get more than 60 milligrams of vitamin C in a pill. That's worthless. Vitamin C is very good at 1,000 milligram doses, a gram. That's what the studies show. It has a huge benefit. If we were to adopt the rules of Europe and Canada for our vitamins, we wouldn't have vitamins.
The FDA says because we don't regulate them heavily enough, the supplements therefore could be dangerous. And yet if you look at the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, if you look at their data, it reveals that there aren't any fatalities, that there aren't any significant injuries from the use of dietary supplements, whereas adverse reactions to prescription drugs are one of the leading causes of death in this country.
FDA is out there trying to protect their market. On one hand, the patent medications are, on the other hand, quietly buying up many of the vitamin, mineral, and herbal companies. They know this.
One thing that concerns me is if that supplements became a prescription item, our pancreatic enzymes may no longer be available over the counter. But we use specialized enzymes that are made for us specifically in New Zealand for our program, and it would certainly complicate the issue. So I think it would be a disaster if there was a sudden law passed that made all supplements a prescription item, because that would include pancreatic enzymes, which are the essence of our program, and people's lives are at stake.
Prescription drugs, you know, sell over $150 billion a year, and the profit is enormous. So if you talk about what makes the most sense, it isn't necessarily what makes the most sense that really wins the day. It's what makes the most dollars and cents that seems to win the day.
For every member of the House of Representatives, somebody in their district died because of Viox. Somebody in their district had a heart attack because of Viox. It doesn't matter whether it's a red state or a blue state. These are human beings, and what we're talking about is public health. Public health is nonpartisan.
Most Americans engage in dangerous dietary habits. They don't take the supplements they need to prevent disease. The end result is most of the Americans dying in this country today are doing so prematurely. Their lives could be dramatically extended if the information could be released.
One of the most important things to understand when we look at the drug companies and the role they play in our society is to be honest about what their primary responsibility is. They have a primary responsibility to return the maximum amount of profit to their shareholders. And they create the illusion that their responsibility is to improve Americans' health most effectively and efficiently. The creation of that illusion is part of the fulfillment of their primary responsibility, which is to return as much profit to their shareholders as possible.
There will always be a role for medication in medical practice, but it ought to be our last resort, not our first resort. And the problem is, when we turn to medicine as our first treatment, we get iatrogenic illnesses and deaths. The person is injured or killed by the medication that was prescribed by the doctor. We need a new mandate, and the mandate is this. Every HMO, every doctor's office, every hospital should be required, when they're writing out a prescription, to think, is there a non-medical approach that might be more effective, a non-pharmaceutical approach that might work better and mean that we don't have to go to this expense and put the patient at risk.
Medications play are enormously helpful and valuable for individuals who need them, who require them for life-sustaining problems, for example. However, much of the medications being prescribed right now, including the billion-dollar profits being made by some of the atypical antipsychotics and some of the other psychoactive drugs, do not meet that test. People do not need them to live, or necessarily even live better, which is another extraordinary problem.
I would say to the millions of parents, teachers, physicians out there who are concerned about the pharmaceutical industry, drugs, please realize you're on your own. Your family doctor has been misled. Your family doctor cannot knowingly prescribe these drugs to you, knowing all of the side effects. You cannot give knowing consent to be treated with these drugs because you have been lied to. Side effect information has been withheld. Dangers have been withheld. Realize you are on your own.